right on time. I can't believe that. So, questions?
Yeah, Chairman.
Board Member Lara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Dan, several questions, but a comment before. We already got our hands full of everything. Now we're going to go manage another project. I'm very apprehensive where this is going. A couple of I'm going to give you the questions on three of them. You said no effect on Trimet, yet we become the managers. It's got to have effect on our operating budget somewhere. If we're doing some things over there that our people are doing, that's got to come out of there. The local matches, you said, are there deviations? I've walked that rail line. Yeah, there's deviations. There's many deviations on that rail line that probably are going to have to be made. And then how safe is that corridor? That's an old corridor. Are we safe there? Is it worth investing in? I really question that. It's probably on a floodplain, other landslides. I mean, all through there. That's just, to me, not a good thing. Personally, I'd rather see us doing more on the bus end. My double-decker bus stand, perfect for that. Haul plenty more people in one bus. But those are my concerns, Dan, as we move, and if you could.
I'll try to address all three of those. I might ask Alan for some help. Yes, Trimet would have management responsibility, but that time would be charged to the project, just like it is in our current projects. So it wouldn't come out of our operating funds. People working on the project would charge to the project, and that would be included in the project's costs. That's exactly how we do it with all of our projects. The deviations, those are places where the LPA looks at options to move off of the alignment, say, into macadam. It's not so much because of the condition of the corridor in those locations. It's really about trying to leverage the best balance of ridership, development, and time of service. Finally, as far as safety, I mean, the major reason the capital cost is high is because we have to go from one end to the other of that corridor and upgrade it to make it into a safe operating condition. That's where a lot of the costs are. Yes, it's not in good condition right now. We can run the excursion service on it on behalf of the consortium. Lake Oswego actually holds the contracts that run that trolley up and down. But it requires ongoing maintenance, and it's not something that we could take a streetcar on and run at high speeds. It would be rebuilt end to end. Alan, anything to add to that?
That's right. Thank you, sir.
Now, in an earlier iteration, there was also bus rapid transit and by rail. First mix, is that so?
As well as river transit.
Yeah, so we're getting down to just options to consider.
We went from all of those options in the alternative analysis down to 3 for the draft environmental impact statement.
Make that clear that other board members may not have been involved in that iteration. Are there other questions?
If I may, and then just sort of a point of view. So, to follow on what Lynn said, yes, we're being compensated, and I understand that's the compensation of staff time. Money aside, there is an issue, though, of energy and focus. So, to what degree projects like this, and there may be others in the future, including how we participate with streetcar within the city of Portland, city limits, there is this factor of energy and focus, and if that distracts from whatever measure of Trimet essential responsibilities, then that comes at a cost. Is it monetary? Possibly not. Is it substantive? Could be. That's sort of a point of view. In terms of ridership, the figures are interesting and helpful. Thank you for the presentation as well. Imagine the future. I remember a question asked right after the opening of West Side, and led to the feed of the north-south ballot measure, and that's, does this make any difference? So imagine in terms of that ridership service to the function of Highway 43, and granted, we're going to be a population that will continue to grow within the urban growth boundary. So imagine, how does the function of Highway 43 change in either alternative in 2035? I know the ridership levels, but does Highway 43 get better? Does it stay the same? Does it get worse?
I'm going to ask if Alan knows those numbers off the top of his head, because I don't.
Yeah, not numbers so much, but concepts that it is, as you probably know, it's pretty difficult to build a project that literally takes people off the road and nobody else rushes in to fill that space. What a project, anybody who's traveling in the corridor is making decisions about which corridor they travel, when they travel. And so when you take people off, other people tend to fill it. What an investment like this especially would do is allow more people to travel up and down the corridor with no more congestion. There's some analysis in the DEIS that shows a small diminution of traffic along the corridor with actually a little tiny bit higher right at the parking lot access, as you might expect. But what happens is you get more people traveling in the corridor overall.
So in terms of our operational costs, when the system is underway, I think it was 1.5 million per year reduction. If you could imagine, what is the cost of how does that compare to light rail to max? Is it comparable or not? Is it comparable to Portland streetcar cost of operation? I mean, does it? I understand the savings 1.5, but at some point it might be interesting to analyze that. The point of view, this is not a statement about this project. It's about where we go as a region. I think decisions like this lead us to the final question: streetcar and Trimet and streetcar. It's not who comes first. It's how we move forward, and is it together, and what roles, and responsibilities are there. And it seems that there's an incumbent decision at some point on us as a region before we begin to take these significant steps, and I presume there will be others, that we define those roles and responsibilities. Otherwise, we're going to be making incremental decisions and not really knowing or fully providing for the public's best governance, not the governing of the public, but the governing of the overall transportation system. And I really think that's an essential requirement. Does that mean in July that we have all the answers to that? No, not in July, but at some point relatively soon. I think our agency, this board of directors, Portland Streetcar Inc., the city of Portland, really need to analyze that and come to some significant assessment of that to provide in the best possible way for those choices. It's like what we just said in November. Here are the conditions of advancing Portland along the light rail. This. We need these assurances. Without those kinds of roles and responsibilities, we're simply one participant without the capacity to make assurance upon ourselves or upon others. I know you're not I'm making a statement to all of this.
Okay. I want to address several of your questions, and I'll start with the one where you asked about staff and its ability to focus. We will have to add staff to take on this project, and we're already adding staff to do the Portland-Milwaukee project. But there's also an opportunity in that as well. That allows us to train additional staff for the future, and it provides us a platform on which to grow. So there's a sort of a balancing act to be done there. But we would have to add staff. There are people who are on our current staff who are very familiar with this corridor, having served often on behalf of the consortium to manage contracts for its improvement. They would, I'm sure, be interested in taking a managing role of the project. Nevertheless, it certainly is a situation where we have to grow to be able to manage the contract. I'm going to ask Alan if he might be able to comment on your question about the context for the 1.5 million. What does that equate to in light rail service or maybe bus service?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer that off the cuff. I probably need to follow up a little bit more on what they're most interested in. But maybe we could follow up with that at a later date.
That's great. And it's a good question. I think it's good to have that context, what that means to us.
Maybe we can bring to you the cost of, for example, running the green line as a thing.
Well, it's more helpful if you get cost of operating, what's the operating cost of streetcar? I guess I just don't really know.
Yeah.
And then as to your question regarding the long-term role of streetcar, I'm going to ask if Neil has any thoughts about that.
I get the lateral another one. And then I warned you about that. Well, first of all, I think that is a very important question, and it's one that is being asked in all of the forums you mentioned, City Portland, Trimet, and Portland Streetcar Inc. Indeed, Portland Streetcar Inc. has actually engaged the services of some people that you perhaps know well. Certainly some of the board members have been around. Bruce Harder and Dick Feeney actually are doing some work in terms of trying to think through what the relationship could or should be, not in terms of trying to define it, but in terms of defining the process and conversations that need to occur to better refine that over time. My own sense is it's probably something that will mold over time, that we'll look at through a current arrangement, the arrangement for the next project, and I would see that there would be sort of stair steps or changes in that relationship over time based on changing circumstances that I think can provide the same sort of overall governance that you're talking about. One of the interesting things I think about both the streetcar loop and this project is that for the first time the streetcar now is really embedded and engaged in the regional process. So they're working through the Metro RTP, high capacity transit plan process, and again with us in terms of really integrating those plans much more than frankly the early stages of the streetcar, which are really focused on how to provide the infrastructure to develop a key new part of the city. And it was a much more local tool at that point in time. Now it's becoming a regional tool. I think to a large extent because of success in achieving those regional objectives. And I think we have to. There were a lot of skeptics around trying that about the streetcar originally, but I think at least now I'll speak for myself. I've become a believer. It's been very effective in setting the right kind of development that I think the Region 2040 plan requires of us. And so the question is, how do you begin to use that new tool in the transportation box, if you will, and then how to integrate it and make sure it's integrated into our service. We'll have baby steps along the way. I'm not even sure baby step is long, but for example, one of the next questions you'll face as a board related to streetcar will have to do with fare policy. And that will relate to the opening of the streetcar loop. And how does the loop interact then with the current circulation function on the west side and the extension to the east side? How does that relate to the whole Trimet system fare policy? So for example, Carolyn is leading a process that's beginning to gather a great deal of information, a collaborative process with the city and the streetcar to begin to evaluate that. So long answer to, I think, what I think you recognize is a complicated process that needs to, a whole series of conversations that need to occur over a period of time on a very important topic.
It's good to have those issues sort of highlighted, doesn't it? I mean, they all get answered now.